Well, Aurelio, welcome to the new year. It is now 2018. We've somehow managed to go through to the future. How you doing? How's your new year starting off?
I'm good. I don't feel the change of the year, but I hope next month I will start feeling it.
You don't feel it yet? How come? What's the problem?
Well, nobody can feel it, you know.
I feel it.
I know, but you're drinking alcohol,
Oh,
so
that's what? Just do you think this contains some of this? Is that what you're saying?
oh,
Why would you? Why? How do you know? Who can say?
who can say?
Who can say? All right, so I want to talk to you about a couple things. First of all, tomorrow night at the Sitka Public Library, I will be live streaming an event, the Psychology of Lies, the False Allegations textbook. We're going to talk about. Tell us a little bit of what you're gonna be discussing. You're going to be phoning in and doing about 15, 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to talk about?
I will give a very quick lecture about how we build the uses or the philosophy behind the book, because I think that's very important
Right.
to tell the audience, like why we do a book about false allegations. And it's not about is so many false allegations, the victims are lying all the time. Well, that's a real possibility.
Right.
The most important part is like each case needs work.
Right.
In order to understand who's lying and who's not, you need to do the work all the time. And I'm going to talk about especially what's going on here in Mexico, in some parts of Latin America, where they are using this idea that you cannot believe the victims because the victims are lying all the time. So you don't need to do the work. You only need to use your special powers of seeing the lies in the eyes of people or in their emotional expressions or whatever bogus pseudoscience you're using.
Exactly. There's a lot of pseudoscience in deception detection, and a lot of basically. Well, I won't get into it now. We'll save that for the lecture. But I'm going to talk about why people lie and the types of lies that they tell. Some fun cases that just came out. I don't know if you saw. There was a young lady who was arrested for making over 600 false calls to 911 the other day. She was charged with over in a very short period of time, like sometimes up to 20 a day. And it's again, I one of the things I just want to pull up this slide really quick because I think it speaks to what we're talking about, and that is the obligation of the investigator. Let's see. The investigator's personal and professional dispositions dictate whether and how objectively criminal allegations are investigated. And I think that's a really important issue because it sets at the outset this idea that if you have a specific allegation that you're making, investigators have an obligation to investigate it, no matter what their personal beliefs are. If they think it's true, they have to investigate it using the proper protocols. If they think it's false, they have to investigate it using the proper protocols. So you can't shirk your responsibility just based on your personal feelings, right? That's the whole point.
And your personal feelings, and obviously the ideology of the place you live.
Right. Well, the ideology of not only your culture, but also your employer.
Yeah. So that's two are very bad combination in terms of injustice to people who are already vulnerable.
That's exactly right. People who are already vulnerable, already trying to make these allegations, and maybe they feel safe doing it, maybe they don't feel safe doing it. Your job is to make them feel safe so that they can understand that they're going to be heard, they're going to be listened to, and they're going to be investigated. But what that means, the only person who doesn't like that, the only person who wouldn't like all the protocols being followed is somebody who's making a false allegation. And so these protocols that we're going to talk about are actually designed to strengthen the power and the authority and the reliability of actual cases, of actual allegations of sexual assault or hate crimes or whatever allegation you're making occurred, right?
Exactly. So what we need protocols is because if you don't use it, you cannot really understand what you're seeing in front of you. That's the most difficult part because we are training, or there's this idea or this fantasy that the intuition that you have are very important.
Right.
And it is, but you cannot be guided by that intuition to a specific task. The intuition gives you a wide perspective of the problem, but you need to do the work also. So that's the difficult part. You think that the ultimate goal is to not follow the protocols because you have these special abilities or skills or powers.
That's the danger right there. Believing that you have special powers, special knowledge. In fact, I would argue that the better you get, the more responsible you are for understanding the protocols and following them. There are going to be times when you can't follow the protocols for whatever reason. You need to be able to explain and know why. You need to be able to understand those situations. It's not your experience should not be used as an excuse for your own desire to not do the work. And that's what happens more often than not. Or your own, to validate your own personal beliefs. That's the real problem that I see.
Yeah. So this is gonna be live streamed to the whole audience they can see the tomorrow lecture.
That's exactly right. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to talk in general about the psychology behind lying, why people lie and what context they lie in, their motivations. You're going to talk about the importance of protocols and why they have to be followed and the cultural context in Mexico. And then I'm going to follow that up with what's going on here in the United States. Now, I did a very interesting interview with someone from the local paper here about our event. And she's going to be in attendance, the reporter. And she asked me a couple things. Some very insightful questions I didn't expect. Usually they're very nice pieces and not a lot of depth to them, but there's some very interesting questions. We actually got to talk about, she wanted to talk about my attitude towards the Me Too movement and my attitude towards what I thought of the allegations that were coming out. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because I think people actually, that's something that's going on right now. We talked about it when it first started. And the Me Too movement is, well, you explain what the Me Too movement is. So, because I want to hear from your perspective. Me Too is a movement that was started last year by some actresses who were reporting. There was one actress in particular who recorded an instance with Harvey Weinstein and put it out there that she had been sort of almost pressured into a sexual context, but she recorded it. So the allegation was irrefutable. And then everyone else tell me about the Me Too movement from that point forward. So from your perspective.
Well, the Me Too movement is a movement that obviously starts in the United States, but they have a back history in France and also in Latin America.
That's right.
And the idea is that a lot of women start to, trying to bring light to this phenomenon of sexual abuse and harassment. And the idea is that, okay, I will speak about my own experience so people can see, especially men, can see that this thing is happening. When Harvey Weinstein allegation came up with, any allegation comes in any context, women always, they don't act surprised. They don't say, oh my God, men do this kind of stuff. No, the only people who act surprised is men.
Right.
And they say like, oh, what's going on? Or trying to be, very, they don't believe the idea because this is a problem that is under the radar. Right. So the Me Too is a movement that tries to put the problem in the public space so we can discuss it and say, this is a thing that is happening. So
to create, this is something we've dealt with in Aguascalientes as well, where we have the issue of femicide that we're dealing with. And the Casa de Juridica, the Supreme Court, has always been very generous with us in providing us safe spaces to talk about the femicide problem with victims' families. That's a big deal. To have a place that is safe, where you can talk about these things that are going on without fear of attack, reprisal, retaliation, or without like you're going to get fired or you're going to get hurt. Creating that safe space is a very big deal. It cannot be. And well, this is the thing I talked to the reporter about. I said, look, we have this problem. It's going on. It's a real thing. But victims are not always comfortable in coming forward. And what it takes sometimes is other people coming forward to make them feel safe enough to speak their own truth. And we have an obligation not to react to that in a way that's hostile or angry, but shut the fuck up and just listen and go, okay, we need to hear this. And there's a difference between that social need and a reality, a legal reality. If someone files a allegation of sexual assault against somebody in a criminal context, that's a thing that needs to be investigated and followed up with protocols. That's a whole different thing. Because a lot of the times the allegations that people are making about sexual harassment, they're minor. They're things that make them that are not major crimes, but they make them feel uncomfortable enough to change their behavior, or make them not feel safe enough to work in a particular office or work with a particular person. So it deprives them of that's the word I couldn't remember. You were going to kill me. You know what word I couldn't remember?
What?
Agency. It deprives them of agency. I'm a bad person, and because it's the most important word in the conversation is having agency, having the ability to have these conversations at all. So having them in a social context is one thing to feel safe, and a lot of the cases will have aged out so that they can't be criminally prosecuted, but the people still need to feel safe to talk about them for therapeutic reasons, for social healing reasons, for social development reasons, for social change reasons. A legal accusation is something completely different. And once you have a legal accusation, that's when the protocols come down and you have to do an actual investigation, right? I mean, talk to me about the difference between that and that.
I think the attitude needs to be the same in terms of how you perform the interview, how you treat the victims, because they have rights.
Yeah.
Because it becomes, in my country, you became a victim in legal terms when there's information that you are a victim of violence. I mean, we are going to do, according to the law, we're going to do the investigation, but we're going to treat you as a victim.
Right.
So you can later, we know that you're not a real victim, but you have the right to treat it as a real victim, because there's no point in not believing a victim. The attitude, there's no point to be accepting, because that's not a good thing to do. Right. In terms of getting good information, in terms of protecting the people. But what you need to do is do a real investigation.
Right, and the results of that investigation. Right. So the result of that investigation, after you're done, that's when you'll have a conclusion about what actually happened.
Exactly.
And that's the part that we're missing, because I think what people want to do is they want to skip to the end. They want to decide based on looking at somebody whether or not they're telling the truth. They want to decide based on the color of their skin, or they want to decide based on whether or not they like them. They want to decide based on their political viewpoints, whether or not they should be believed. Like, for example, on the cover of the textbook, on the cover of our textbook is a case of a young lady who's in court, and she has been found to have been guilty of filing a false allegation. She's right here in the pic. There's a whole picture of her in the textbook, but you can just see the bottom of her head here. She's in court. Now, she is a person who made a false allegation, specifically that there was a hate crime committed against her in a political context by supporters of Donald J. Trump, our new president. And the reality is, while I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, those issues, who I support politically, goes out the window when I start doing my casework. It doesn't matter to me who I support politically, because whether or not you're making a false report, whether or not a crime occurred, that's independent of all that. I'm going to follow the protocols, and the protocols are going to tell me what's true and what's not. So even though politically I'm sympathetic to her, I understand her desires, I understand her motivations, I understand them completely, that doesn't give you the right to make false allegations of crime. So just because I agree with her politically means I have to be more careful about how I follow those protocols, not less careful. I don't get to decide, I like her views, so I'm just going to let her slide on these things. That's not how it works. You follow the protocols the same way every time. So it's a very good point. The next thing is, like we talked about, if it's a real allegation, following the protocols are going to make it that much firmer, that much more solid. I'm very excited about having that conversation tomorrow and being more and showing more cases and that sort of thing. So I appreciate your willingness to join me. Let's see. There was a couple other things I wanted to go over. There's a couple other the quotes we put out there, which I really enjoy, and I really want you to respond to. I feel this is one of the most in-depth, one of the more deeper concepts that we're not exploring in our culture that I think we do need to explore. And that is that the more unhappy we are, the more fake we become. I want you to talk to me about that a little bit, because I think that relates directly to the false allegation issue.
The more what? I lost the connection.
Sure. The more unhappy we are as people, the more fake we become.
The more what?
Fake, not real, phony.
Fake, like the
Fake.
opposite of real.
Like the exactly.
Fake news.
Well, you're fake news. First of all, don't be fake news with me right now. I will fake news you. I will double down.
Well, it's yeah, and especially if you're doing a proper victimology work. I actually have been having this conversation with one colleague from Sonora.
Yep.
They were talking about one case, and everybody's talking about suicide.
Really?
It was an accident. It was a car crash.
Okay.
And everybody's talking about, maybe was intentional,
Right.
She has some problem or whatever.
Right.
No intentional to do this. And this is not a rare thing. There's a lot of people think that if you see a car crash or people hang from a rope or someone who was jumped from a building, you already know what's going on.
Right, you already know what happened just by being able to see the result.
Yeah, it's like if you see in the newspaper like so-and-so jumped from a building and now he's dead and it's a suicide, you assume that some reporters are going to know the result of some very complicated investigation you need to do.
Right.
And if you do investigation, it's like, we were talking about that with a colleague, and she says but nobody see any indication of suicide.
Right.
And I said, it's because those type of information are not available for friends or for people who know her.
Right.
Those type of information are gonna become reality, in the light when someone do victimology.
Right.
And you start doing that, you're gonna see how fake people, are building a fake image of themselves in social media and so on and so on.
Right. So basically, you're talking. Let me clear this up. You're talking about two separate things. You're talking about the responsibility of professionals to do their job. When you see something reported in the news, you think that it's actually the result of a full investigation, or even if they post, they repost. If they find something in the news and they repost it and they give opinions about it, you will assume that it's actually the result of their full investigation into the matter, when in fact they have nothing to do with the case, right? So they might be repeating things that are just not true. They haven't done the victimology. They haven't done the investigation. They're going just off newspaper articles. They have no idea what's going on. And so they're giving opinions that make themselves appear to be more professional when actually they have no connection to these cases whatsoever. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
That's a huge problem in the academic and forensic communities, especially when it comes to high-profile cases or cases that are very sensational. For example, you know me, when I get asked to look at a case by the media, I will ask them for the material that they were getting discovery. They will actually get access to autopsy reports, investigative reports, search warrants, probable cause affidavits. Those are things I can read that have real information in them that I can evaluate. If we don't have that, then all I can do when I'm talking to the media is say, here's the kind of thing you do generally in these kinds of investigations. You don't give firm opinions. And you certainly don't go on the news and accuse people of being guilty or innocent based on what you've read in the news. I was on headline news one time. It was on Nancy Grace. And it was a long time ago. And there was this guy who was the ethical chair of the American one of these organizations that does polygraphs. And he was saying, oh, I could just tell from looking at the guy, he was lying and this and that, and I knew he was guilty. And the first thing I said when she came to me and asked me what about my thoughts, I said, well, first of all, as my colleague must be aware, it is completely unethical to try someone in the media and use how they look in their eyes or how they look on their face to suggest guilt or innocence. And even his own professional organization has guidelines that are against this. Because I looked them up before I went on air. Because I always check out who I'm going on camera with to see who they are. And while he was talking, I just plugged it into my phone to figure out what his ethical guidelines say. And the first thing he did was he goes, who are you? How can you say, who are you? Who is this guy? And I'm like, my name is Brent Turvey. I'm a forensic scientist. And that's irrelevant because we know that you have this. Yeah. And you know what she did? She cut me off. Oh. Nancy Grace cut me off. Yeah. So I never went back on her show again. I'm like, okay, well, we know what she wants. She likes to accuse people.
That's a very hardcore ad hominem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's libelous is the word you're looking for. Nancy Grace herself, her show has been sued multiple times for those kinds of ad hominems. So I appreciate that. It's one of those things when people like being on television, and I frankly don't care. So when I have the opportunity to be on television, if it's good, I will just say what's true and try to stay true to myself and my profession and not buy into the nonsense. You know what I mean? That's the danger.
It happens to me the same when someone of the press talked me about a case that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
And obviously what you can provide, because you have an obligation to talk to the public about these things, is the same. It's very boring. It's not about this case. I cannot talk about this case.
Right.
I can talk about what's the normal things that can occur in order to have better information.
Right.
And what the investigators need to take care so we can know what really happened.
Right. Yeah, that's
a very boring question.
Well,
very boring answer for the media.
Well, worse than that is that there are people who, the less they know, the more willing they are to speak about things they don't understand. That's the thing that I've found. The less they know, the more willing they are to speak about things that they do not understand.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. If you don't have the right character and the right experience, you're going to wind up agreeing to things or saying things you shouldn't say at all. I'm sometimes when I'm talking, I can see my wife. She'll shake her head. She's like, "You got to stay in your lane. Stay with your stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Let's back it up." You have to actually be very careful not to form or offer forensic conclusions on things you don't know anything about. There are certain things you can say, but it's usually like one narrow bandwidth. Here's something I can say. Here's something I can ask. Here's some questions that need to be answered. And those are interesting questions. But the reality is what they want is, innocent or guilty right now. And they'll do that kind of crap to you. And you're like, you can't do that. That's unethical. And the problem is you have other people pretending to be professionals who will do that and make it look like somehow you are the person who's unknowledgeable because you're unwilling to lie. That's the little game people play. The unwillingness to lie is evidence of ethics, not evidence of ignorance.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, well, way too much. I really appreciate the psychological insight you bring to this, but I want to get back to my original question, which you completely failed to answer because you fake news me into a corner.
I actually answered it, but
you really didn't answer it at all. And I appreciate your inability. I appreciate that if you didn't have the answer, you weren't willing to give it. But let me ask you this. What I have found is there are a lot of people who we're getting more and more out of touch with ourselves. We're not researching, we're not reading, we're being a more reactive society. And there's a lot of unhappiness related to that. But the fakeness is being rewarded. So the more unhappy, but what I've seen is the correlation. The more unhappy people are, the more fake they become to make other people think that they're happy even when they're not, when they're miserable. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that as it relates to false allegations.
Well, I'm going to try to explain that you don't know who's fake if you don't do a proper research.
There you go.
Because I know that social media and obviously capitalism Once you, that little thing.
That little thing. Are you're talking about the United States and capitalism? Okay.
No, not only the United States. Japan
know.
is better than you, and China better than the United States in doing capitalism.
Oh, I know.
But, well, you have your time.
Yeah.
It was a good time. It was a good one.
The 80s were so great, and now they're over.
It was over. It was good. It was so good.
It was so good. All right, so you had this.
What I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
very difficult that coming back to that word, to have agency against not being fake. It's very hard because we live in a world that compels us to be fake. In
other words, being fake is rewarded. Being fake is rewarded.
Fake is rewarded a lot. Because you need to buy things to be fake. You need to sell yourself as a product to be fake and to fit in this logic of society. So it's very hard to understand that being fake not always means that someone has a mental discapacity or someone has a very deep problem.
Right.
Sometimes is that they become addicted to that because it's very hard not to do it.
No, well, let me give you here's how I would put it. There are rewards for being fake. Very clear rewards for being fake. And the way to tell that someone's not fake is they're flawed. There's a phrase. It's you can tell a diamond by its flaws. If I'm dealing with a real person, their shoes are going to be untied. Their hair's going to be a little whatever. They're going to have, their clothes are not going to be perfect, and they're doing the best they can, but it's not. They have real flaw. They're a real person with real issues. They're not this perfect veneer that's being presented, right?
Yeah.
And that
they're doing life. They're lifing.
Right. They're doing life. They're doing life, and life is not perfect. And if what you're seeing is too perfect, then it's fake. And and whenever I was in an airport one time with I would not call him a colleague, but he was someone who used to live in town here in Sitka. We were in Seattle, and he had a reputation of being a bit of I would say inappropriately a ladies' man. He liked the ladies, and he was always on the move trying to find a new lady to take home. Right? These men. That's fine. And so he and I did have a lot in common because I'm married and I don't, I'm not that insecure. so I'm not constantly doing that. But we were standing in line and there was this very attractive woman and she was very well made up and very well put together in terms of her outfit and her makeup and her hair and her nails. Everything was perfect about her, just so perfect. And he looked at her and he gives me that nudge. He goes, "Hey, what do you think of her? What do you think?" And what do you think I said?
Well, did you say that that's fake?
No, close to it. I said, "Oh man, that looks like a lot of work to keep together." That looks like a lot of work to keep together. And I look at that kind of thing, and I just think, I hope that person is spending just as much time taking care of what's going on up here. Because what's going on in here, because that outward appearance of perfection is an illusion, and and the more you attend to that, the more unhappy you're going to be as a person, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's where agency comes forward because there's very few men who are doing that. To put their bodies as a product.
Right.
We're not living that. We don't need. It's nice if we take care of ourselves. It's nice.
Yeah,
but,
it is nice.
As people can see, we're not doing it.
Well, you and I in particular are not doing it at all. Especially us. I don't want to single out either one of us as being a bigger offender. Let's not compete. It's not a competition.
It's because we have the privilege of not being, obligated to do that. But there's a lot of people who don't have that choice, who cannot do that
Right.
choice. It needs to dress up. It needs to.
No, that's exact. My wife was talking to me about this the other day, and we talk about it all the time. Actually, there are in some cultures there are women who will starve before they cut into their makeup budget. They will spend $100 on a lipstick and go without food for 3 or 4 days to make sure they have the right lipstick, or make sure they have the right hair product, or make sure that they have the right base makeup for their face, so that they can look a particular way. So when you see them, they look completely put together and they look like $1 million, but they go home and they live very poorly. They live very modestly. And we have to move from a place where we're valuing that. That's the problem. So for me, having done this work so much and having seen so many fake people with trying to create illusions of themselves and projecting those into the universe as their real self, and when you pull back the curtain, it's not there. Having seen that so many times, I am more impressed when I run across a real person who's reliable and honest, who isn't perfect, than I am with somebody who creates the perfect image of themselves on social media or even in person. I mean, it's impressive, but it's only one layer. It's only one dimension. If you pull it back, what's there? If there's nothing beneath it, then it's an empty shell, right?
And talking about in terms of our careers and what we're doing,
right?
We have the fortune of meeting a lot of people and meeting a lot of people who are clearly having a hiding agenda or they are fake. But also we have the opportunity we know a lot of real people and we work with them.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunities that I've been given in Latin America through teaching with the government, with police, with Ciencia Aplicada, with Red Criminology, with the Institute now that we're working on this together. Those opportunities have taken me to so many different places. I've met so many students, so many instructors, so many professionals at different level. Some of them are intensely fake with hidden agendas, as you said, but a lot of them are real people just trying to live life and trying to get better and get smarter. And those are the kind of people that impress the shit out of me.
Yeah, we meet, when we go to big lectures, we usually meet one or two people who are, we say, oh, these people really have an interest, a really passion of this one, and they have good motives of doing it.
That's right.
I think that's encouraging. I know it's not encouraging for people who are starting to say like one of two people in 100.
That's right.
Well, that's actually very good. One of two in 100 are very good numbers.
And by the way, for those of you who don't know Aurelio Coronado, that's what passes for optimism. That was a very big admission on your part. I'm surprised you said it was 2. Because I would have said you would have said 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. Because normally your glass is not only empty, there's like 2 different kinds of people, right? Glass half empty, glass half full, and you're the kind of person who's not only is there somebody stole my glass, but now I owe somebody for like 10 glasses. There was never a glass, and I got billed for it.
Well, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, that's true. But not everybody's like that. And it's not that I choose to believe anything. I just know that the reward for effort is finding good people. There's a number of good people out there that I've run into over the years, and that makes it worth it. And you get to be one of them, by the way. I'm going to count you as one of them.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to say to me, or?
I'm lost to you.
Is it there? I thought you don't.
This is the moment
with you. You see that? You see that, Aurelio, right there? That would have been a perfect moment for you to show some humanity. Instead, you're ripping me a new one. That would have been a perfect moment to validate me. That would have been a perfect moment.
I know. And you know how much I enjoy to ruin this moment.
So there's nothing you want to say to me? You're good?
Yes, we're going to have a lecture tomorrow. Invite everyone to take a look.
I really hope that everyone can join us tomorrow. We will be live streaming our event from the Sitka Public Library in downtown Sitka, Alaska, starting at 6 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. We are so big, we have our own time zone. What time is that going to be in Merida? I think you're 3 hours ahead, so that'll be 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock in Merida, in Aguascalientes, right?
Aguascalientes is going to be 9 o'clock, but in Merida and Chetumal it's going to be, I think, 11.
What about Mexico City?
Mexico City, the same, 9 p.m.
9 o'clock, okay. And in the United States, in the Pacific Standard Time, it'll be 7 o'clock, 7 p.m.
Something like that, yes.
Exactly.
And tomorrow also I'm going to be in, I don't know where, I'm going to be tomorrow in the Commission of Human Rights of Aguascalientes. I'm going to be in the Senate. I'm going to talk about a publication that I just released last month about torture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who write a magazine and about the problem of torture in Mexico. And tomorrow we're going to present that magazine. I'm going to give you one copy to you, and we're going to talk tomorrow at 10 p.m. And I think I'm going to live stream some part of them.
So after our lecture, you're going to go on and do something more important? Is that what you're saying?
Oof, not more important. Just different, you know.
And but just to finish up our freer conversation, there's nothing you want to say to me? So you don't really.
I'm losing you.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this evening, and I cannot wait for us. Well, it's always a pleasure. It's very one-sided. I understand. You get a lot of pleasure at it, and I appreciate your time.
It was fun.
All right, it was. So tomorrow, 6 o'clock, live stream from the public library, and then how much longer later till yours occurs?
No, mine's gonna be earlier. It's gonna be
in the morning.
It's gonna be like 7 a.m. in your time.
Okay, but you'll live stream that. You'll put that video up so everybody can see it.
I hope so. I think so.
Do you know how the technology works?
No,
like
not really.
Like that. This is not a.
I will try. People don't get so, but I will try some parts of my part.
Okay. All right, my friend. I'm going to let you go right there. Thank you so much for staying with me so long. All right, take it easy.